Tonight, the Biden administration is facing crises on multiple fronts. Record inflation, record gas prices, a baby formula crisis, COVID, and now a gun violence epidemic that just seems to be continuing to be spiraling out of control. And amid all of this, the president's message seems to be getting more pessimistic about what he could actually do.
The idea we're going to be able to, click a switch, bring down the cost of gasoline is not likely in the near term, nor is it with regard to food. We did everything in our power from that point on, and that's all I can tell you right now.
What more can you do on guns via executive action?
Not much on executive action.
It's easy to question the wisdom of the president making such admissions. CNN's Stephen Collinson writes, quote, Biden is bolstering perceptions that his crisis-submerged presidency is beleaguered. His frankness offers no comfort to Americans looking for answers. But in tonight's debate, we want to explore a different question. Does the president have a point? Are President Biden's struggles actually a sign of a problem with the office of the presidency itself? My next guests have had this argument before. Ryan Lizza wrote about what he called, quote, the powerless presidency during the Obama administration. And Matt Lewis responded with an article of his own, arguing, quote, the presidency is not powerless and Ryan Lizza is wrong to claim it is. And they both join me now. Ryan and Matt, good to see you both.
Wow. It's like the ghost of columnists.
I know, we're just like rehashing old beef that you guys had. No, I'm kidding. I know that this is, you have a mutual respect for each other, different viewpoints though on this issue. So Ryan, you stand by what you said back then. What do you think? Attributing the president's self-possessed inability to completely fix these problems to the limitations of the office rather than the president himself?
Well, sorry about that.
So typical, right?
Look, I know. I think that most presidents suffer from one big problem, and that is expectations. They campaign on things that they know they often won't get done, and they realize in office that the presidency is not as powerful as sometimes in popular culture, and even in Washington debates as people think it is, and they let people down. And so it's not the worst thing in the world for a president to be frank about the limits of his power. Remember, the president is co-equal with Congress. Unless the president has big partisan majorities in Congress, presidents don't get much done, right? Even the most towering presidents in history, it's really all about Congress. Remember, think of LBJ, who we think of as this great president who twisted arms and convinced the other side to do all of his vote for his legislation. Well, not really. He had massive Democratic majorities, and then when he lost those majorities, he couldn't get anything done. So I don't think there's anything wrong with President Biden being honest about that kind of structural role of the presidency or structural nature of the presidency's powers.
What do you think, Matt? Do you disagree?
I do disagree. Look, every president gets dealt a hand that they have to play. Average presidents, and most presidents are average, and average presidents let circumstances define their presidency. But effective presidents are able to drive the agenda, and when something goes wrong, they're able to reinvent themselves and flip the script. I'm thinking Ronald Reagan in '82. I'm thinking Bill Clinton in '94. The problem Joe Biden has, he has dug himself a hole, but I don't think he has the political or leadership abilities or communications savvy to extricate himself from that hole. But I think the key point I would just reiterate is, Joe Biden is not a victim of circumstance. It was not inevitable that he would get into problems he's gotten into. A lot of them were choices, and I still think that a president who had better skills would be able to extricate themselves and turn it around at this point.
So I want to delve a little bit deeper into that, and go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I think this is probably what you were going to ask anyway, Pam, but what are the skills that a president could have right now, any president, any party, Republican, Democrat, Green, Libertarian, Independent, that could fix inflation and convince 10 Republicans to pass the Democratic gun control agenda. I don't know what those skills are. He's facing a structural problem on those two, currently two big issues. Same problem he had when Democrats tried to nationalize or codify Roe versus Wade, or when they tried to pass voting rights, or when he tried to pass the agenda he campaigned on, Build Back Better. There's no magic wand to get votes from the other side, and there's no the communication is very limited. One example, sorry for hogging up so much time, but one example, one of the senators today who's working on the gun rights legislation, a Democratic senator today, said they don't want Joe Biden to enter the debate in the Senate because they know that will turn off Republicans. So that's how hard it is in a polarized environment where the act of actually talking about the legislation and inserting yourself into the negotiation repels the same people you need to attract. So what is the fix for that, Matt?
Well, first of all, this is the NFL, right? Not for long is what it stands for. Joe Biden's a pro. The Republicans are pros. Every president. Now, I'll grant you that we live in some very polarized days, but presidents are used to opposition, and the good presidents are able to somehow rise above it and succeed. You asked me how Joe Biden can fix the problem now. Well, first of all, he laid the groundwork for his problems a year ago with the Afghanistan withdrawal, which I think was the beginning of the cratering of his popularity, where he lost the political capital he might have had to impose his agenda. I also think he just fundamentally misread his mandate. And if you look at a lot of these problems, including inflation that you mentioned, some of it I will grant you is the product of supply chains or other things like that. But I think some of it is the product of his agenda and of misreading his mandate. So at this point, I agree. It would be hard to dig himself out of this hole. I think the first step, though, is to do something big and bold and maybe just symbolic. Fire Klain, his chief of staff. He needs to send a message. If you're in the NFL and your team loses, you're trying to be the Dallas Cowboys, and every season you lose, the first thing you should do is fire your coach, because you can't fire yourself if you're the owner. You fire the coach. It sends a signal that we're going to change the culture. We're going to change the organization. Biden is letting things happen to him. He doesn't have to. He can seize control of his own White House.
So what do you think about that, Ryan? I know you've got some thoughts and this proposition from Matt to fire his chief of staff, to cause a shakeup.
Well, I mean, my question to Matt was, Matt and I are old friends, but my question to Matt was, how could he personally fix inflation? He can't, right? So I think being honest about that is not a bad thing. We want our presidents to be honest. And firing Ron Klain, I promise you, is not going to fix the inflation problem. Firing Ron Klain is not going to get 10 Republican votes in the Senate for gun legislation. The president is not all powerful. He doesn't have the votes for a lot of his agenda in Congress. And on the big issue that Americans care about, inflation, Matt is right. The ARP, most economists will say, contributed to inflation. We probably would have had serious inflation anyway, but the ARP does seem like it contributed increased inflation. At this point, though, he doesn't have any control over that issue, especially in the months before the midterms. The best thing that presidents can do if they want to get a lot of stuff done is make sure they have 60 votes in the Senate and a majority in the House.
All right, 15 seconds, Max. We got to wrap up.
Well, let's see where to go. Look, I think that every time a Democrat is in the White House, we have this discussion. When Jimmy Carter was president, we said, or talking heads said, the job is just too big for one person. The last time Ryan and I had this fight, Barack Obama was president, and here we are again. I think that actually the buck stops there. Presidents actually do matter. And I think it's a cop-out for us to say that, well, what are you going to do? You got to have 60 votes. No, their job is to get things done. And so
But
You
we
don't get
should
to be
frank
president
about the
unless you
limitations of the
have an
office.
agenda and you
Democrats
want to
All right,
win.
I'll
and
let you
can't
guys
say,
call
well,
each other.
it was
I
too
know, by
hard.
the way, Matt,
the
that
other
was-
team wouldn't let me win.
I appreciate the NFL analogy. I'm going to let you guys discuss this offline. I know that, Matt, you called Ryan initially just to throw him off his game. So I'll let you to actually have
was my
that
son,
conversation.
Aiden, and Aiden, if you're watching, I'm going to call you back right now. And
Yeah,
let's have
exactly.
this debate again in 11 years.
Lewis's and the Liz's go
Settling the
back
score.
ages.
Yeah, in 11 years, we'll see you again. All right, Ryan Liz and Matt Lewis, thank you both. We'll be right back.